Welcome. I'm going to continue with the inputs and cover things from the PARAM menu, from calendar to image sampler, and troubleshoot any things that might be in there. So we're not going to start with that image sampler, my son's face down here. We're actually going to go into perspective view and jump in and just take a look at this sphere. And this is pretty simple stuff to start. Actually, before we even start that, may as well take a look that you can import in a pretty cool calendar that you can update and have on your desktop anytime you want to switch years, find out whatever information you need. It's just basically not a calculator, but it's a calculator for the clock and telling time. And then the clock is there that can accurately draw out. And you can pull that into your script and have that current data whenever you want. The color picker is pretty simple. I'm going to take this off. And the color picker is pretty cool, but you have to remember you can't have tons of color pickers all active in the same document. I've run into a little bit of problems with that. So if I grab this one and I look at this shader, I can move that. I can also slide that back, have changes in colors, pull it out to blues, and basically I'm using a sphere shape, but you have to have that one on the go. And you can see that I'm having some minor effects of that. It's strange how I'm not grabbing as much as I want. Could be that I'm not in a shaded mode. That's probably it. But then again, I'm starting to have trouble again with this color field. It might be that I have other things open, but I don't think I do. Let me take off everything and disable everything. And then I go in and just say, listen, I only want to enable these shapes, and I want to be able to jump into that color and have effects on that. It might be that I have to be outside of it. There it is. You have to not be clicking. You can't be selecting items. You can only have one open, and there you're having effects of the colors finally. Sorry about that, but it is a fidgety little thing that I haven't quite got my mind totally around it. And I don't spend a lot of time in that. I go into render mode and material mode in Rhino after I bake. So let's take this as disable, and let's keep that sphere active, but let's pull it into here and enable this one, which is more data coming out of here, and we'll enable that one. You can see that I can have a strange, by leaving it, I can have a strange color effect on this one by a color wheel. You can control different saturations and luminosity, and you can change the amount of colors that are influencing it, which is a very cool tool, and you see the data jumping in here, and the param viewer saying that as well. So once again, shut that one down, disable that. It's maybe not necessary, but I found it's necessary for me to make things work, and I'm going to enable this one and make sure I've left it. So that's the color that's in there, and now I'm able to use a param from 0 to 1 to take my colors from green to blue. And this is a nice one. You pop in another color, you slide it and have effects on things. And if you want to get rid of these little points, you just grab them and you pull it off the screen and they disappear, and then you have a different color scheme that's going. And you can also set the range. So if you only want to hum around right in the middle, that'll take the range in the middle of this color. That said, so we'll jump in there and see the param viewer as it slides through it. So you can affect that. If you think in maths, domain and ranges, this should make sense as well to you. I think I'll leave that one up. Actually, we'll just take the preview off. We don't need this sphere anymore. Let's take off the preview at least. And so some's disabled, some isn't. Now also the other tool in here was the graph mapper. And what I did was let's enable that and put it on preview on. Basically, I constructed a domain range to go through the graph mapper into a point system, and that's exactly what I did. My little L is making a ton of noise, which is common, and I interpolated it. But what I have is control over that by a graph mapper, so I don't have to work in equations. I can actually jump into here, and what's nice is Grasshopper's really made an effort to bring in new graph types, and you can have full control over what you're doing as you jump into here. And there'll be a few more with, I guess, the next version of Windows, getting close to Windows 7. And what's nice is you can have multiple graph mappers. A lot of people don't know that. You just, I didn't mean to do that. I didn't mean to do that. I meant to grab this one and just say, well, what if I wanted to multiply that one by a Bezier curve and have an influence on that one? Well, you just literally take that data and you funnel it through more data. And that could be fun. And you can always grab this one and put it into the Z, and now you have something three-dimensional. So that is a very cool tool, the graph mapper. I would play around with it. The last thing I'm going to look at as I leave here is go into I'm going to just hit preview off. I'm going to go into top view fully, and I'm going to jump into this. I have to activate it. Enable, and preview on. I have the face of my son here, and what I wanted to show is as you start to bring data in, as you bring in the image sampler from PARAM, this is where I think it's good for people starting out. You can right-click on it and go in and clamp tiles, do files, flip tiles, and all that, but that's secondary to right-clicking on it and importing a file. So you'd go here, you'd find a file online, and you'd bring it in. You also have to change this count to say 30 and 40 to make kind of a picture frame, and you have to interpolate the data. So that's exactly what I did to this one. So as I double click this one, you'll see I've brought it in. I haven't changed the scale yet on this one. Like say I want it to be 30 by 40. I haven't interpolated it yet, and I did set it from all these colors to black and white. So actually I haven't done all the information I need to do in here. So let's take it to a 30 by 30 frame, and that will set up how big it is. And there we go. Now that would actually register if I brought it out into some geometry. Well, that's what I've done with this one. So I've gone in, set 0 to 30, 0 to 40, interpolated, brought it black and white, and have it. And now it's functioning. Now you don't have any of these warnings on here. And what I did was I put it into a grid system, which means I could have multiple, I could really extend this out. So as I go here and maybe make the circle smaller. I can extend it out like that to change the size of the circles that are influencing the drawing. I can also bring the scale of the drawing out. I can make it so it's tiled so I get multiple pictures. So when I right click on here, I can do clamp, tile, flip images. But in the end, I really just wanted to put circles on all those center points. And I wanted to be able to have control over dividing those circles to make them smaller or larger. And what that does is it affects that picture. And I'm able to treat that data coming out, because a lot of people don't see what the image sampler is actually doing. It's providing data, and you're dealing in maths. And to think of maths to actually create who your son is and who the person in your life is, well, that's kind of a really good conceptual exercise. And you get 101 branches here with 131 items on each. So those are rows and columns, and that's a lot of data. So you've got quite a bit in there. And that said, I brought it into circles, and at this point, say you had it and you actually wanted to make something like this, let me go in and make sure they're not overlapping. Say I actually wanted to fabricate this. I technically could go in like a mad person, like a jigsaw puzzle, and this may slow down when I bring it to the surface, but I might consider, and this will really slow it down if I have my profiler on, 3.7 seconds. Now imagine in looking at that, it's just taking time to do, and saying, okay, there's your blue circles, that's what you need to actually make this exist. And over here, they're so tiny, they're almost irrelevant. If you produce these circles, you could then go and hang them or suspend them. Now imagine how that script slows down as you take that to an extrusion and deal in like physical space. And this is where it's almost pointless to continue. In this model, you're ready for fabrication. You have your specs, you have your image that's informing it. And I see the image wall and things being used at companies like Azane Company that rely on this technology. But that's wrapping the math around the images and the things that are important in your life. So very good inputs to have a PCAT. I'm just going to grab them here. I'm happy that I've given a try at each one of these. We'll throw them into a group, and we'll just take them into a nice pleasant blue. And we'll leave that. And of course, we're going to take further data. We're going to go into all the rest of these pretty awesome PARAM inputs. And we're going to learn how to upload all these files and deal with protein databases and make shapes and get into SHP files and import files and 3DM files. That's pretty cool. And then we'll finish up with some excellent work that will tend towards almost Firefly, a plugin that you can start to record. And I have this all off right now, but you can actually gather data, frequency spectrums, all this wonderful tools that gather and make things animate and move and be in real time. And there's actually some optimization plugins, Galapagos, I want to cover as well, because that's where it emerges when you bring in GOAT and Galapagos. The gene pool we've used, the fitness landscape, is tied to that optimization. This gets pretty thick as well, but I think to spend the time on these first 25 videos, maybe more, and understand there's an interface you have to get used to and wrap your head around. No point jumping into the surfaces and solids and transformations and intersects. Figure out what the params are. What are the inputs? What can come into your script? Understand that they're there and available to you, and certainly know their names enough that they're not alien when they come up in someone else's script. So that said, we're going to keep plugging through, and this file I'll bring up on the upload. Thanks very much for watching.